his availability to a committee to respond to those issues. Probably before the minister takes the platform, introduce over to you.
We're losing you, Chair.
I'm in the platform. I was requesting Shwambu to introduce them. I'm not.
No, thank you very much, Chair. We wrote a letter indeed to you after we learned via media that the National Treasury has taken a loan from the World Bank, and we were asking what could be the purpose of taking a loan from the World Bank, because historically we have had the loans from the World Bank that come with conditionalities that in most instances undermine the policy and economic sovereignty of the countries that take such loans. So we were asking a question as to what is the rationality of South Africa taking a loan from the World Bank, which inevitably will come with conditionalities. That is one. But also, South Africa is having debt obligations, which exceed 200, if not 250 billion annually. What would be the logic when you are owing people 200 or 250 billion to go and borrow 11 billion rand to throw into the fiscus? And that loan inevitably comes with interest. Why would you borrow money to pay debts in terms of what happens? And then the other question, which we then said must be responded to, even in the letter which we wrote to the Minister of Finance, is to who was involved in raising the loan of the 11 billion rands. Who raised the loan? Were there facilitators in between? Are there companies or institutions that are involved in raising the loans, and if they were commissions paid, how much commissions were they paid, and who are the people behind such an arrangement in terms of what happens? And then lastly is, with this loan, what are the conditionalities? What are the expectations? What is South Africa is expected to do by taking a loan which is senseless? Yes.
There's with your connectivity, unless it's me on this other side.
It might be you, Chair. So I was then saying the last question was that what are the conditions that are attached to the loan which has been taken from the World Bank, a senseless loan? That is the framework, yes. I hope I've been heard now, Chair.
Are you done, Honorable Shwambu?
Yes, I was saying that the last question is, what are the conditions and conditionalities that have been attached to the loan? Where is the detailed agreement of the loan in terms of when is it going to be repaid? What are the interests? And what does the World Bank expect South Africa to do in light of the loan that has been given, which we think is a senseless loan? That we must state from the beginning. Thanks. I'm done now.
Okay. Thanks, Honorable Shwambu. Then let's request the minister to been raised.
Chairperson.
Over to you.
Honorable George here.
Honorable George's hand is up, Chairperson.
Are you there, Chairperson?
Simple problem with connectivity. Maybe it's me. I will have to change the gadget.
I think we can hear you now, Chair. Well, no,
Sure.
can't.
It's on and off.
let me quickly change my curtain. I'm trying to change the gadget. There's something not right with my network this other side.
Chairperson, we can hear you now. I'll switch my video off and it might save some bandwidth. If I may speak now, Chair.
Okay, over to you, Dr. Joe. I thought it's my network this side. Okay, I can hear you.
Yeah, Chairperson, I just want to get some clarity. I understand now from the conversations that's been had is that there was a letter that was sent by Honourable Shivambo, and he has asked a number of questions. Is the format of the meeting going to be that we're going to receive a presentation and then we can ask more questions? Because I certainly also do have some questions, given that this is a loan that was taken. Obviously, we'd want to know whether there are any conditions attached, which are likely that is in fact the case. And then also, very importantly, we need to know why it was necessary to take the loan. We do know that, there has been a lot of problems in managing the public finance, and that it probably wasn't necessary to take the loan had the money been better managed. But anyway, that's an issue that for another debate possibly. But I'm assuming then that once the presentation is done, we will have some more questions and not only limited to Honourable Shivambo's question. Thanks.
Are you there, Chair? Honorable members, I think let's give the chairperson maybe 3 minutes.
Next item.
Are you there? Okay. Chairperson, are you there?
Yes, Noxie.
We didn't hear the instruction that you gave after Dr. George had spoken. Chair, we didn't hear you responding to Dr. George or indicating what happens going forward.
Yes, Noxie.
I'm saying, Chair, we didn't hear you after Dr. George spoke. You were silent, and we wanted to check whether you are responding to his question or what direction are you giving, Chair? We didn't hear anything.
Chairperson, I think that there is nothing wrong with what is raised here. Like, I'm sure National Treasury came to this meeting knowing that they have to respond to the basis and the rationale of the World Bank 11 billion rands loan. So I think they must be given an opportunity to explain that, and all of us will then ask questions based on that, so that we then interrogate further what is the rationale and what are the conditionalities that have been attached to the loan itself.
The minister respond to your letter, then we get into the next item question. And so, Honorable Minister, are you ready to respond?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the minister, but we can start if honourable members feel so. Minister will join because some of the facts at a technical level we can explain, and he can then come on when he's available now and to carry on. But we are more than ready to engage.
Chairperson, on a point of order quickly.
What has happened to Shubambu? Wait.
No, but we have to express our discontent with the minister who is called to come to appear before us, and then he takes this time doing other things and not come to a meeting. 9 o'clock, all of us have got other obligations. Why is the minister not here? Is it disrespecting this parliament?
No.
Okay. Honorable Shubambu, we have requested the minister to respond to item 2. And I was told when we started that the minister is in the platform. So nobody has told me that he's no longer in the platform. Alan, is the minister still in the platform?
The minister is online, Chair, but as the DG said earlier, he is online, but I'm not sure if he's available.
What might be the problem? He's online, but he can't hear us from this side.
Chairperson, I've raised my hand. Chair.
I've also raised my hand, Chairperson. It's Dr. George.
Minister.
Honorable Chair, I did explain earlier, maybe Chair, you didn't get me. I was saying his office locked him in because he's on his way to the office. He's not physically in the office as yet. So I was saying we could proceed or we can wait for him, but I guess it's up to the Chair and committee members to decide. But we are here. Thank you.
Chairperson.
Chairperson.
That is what we're raising here. That what kind of a minister is this who knows that a meeting is scheduled for 9 o'clock and just recklessly goes to the office whenever he wants to go there without any reason?
No,
is
honorable
disrespecting this process.
No, honorable members, I think it would be proper for us to wait to be recognized in the meeting so that there is no chaos before we can speak.
Dr. George, can I speak, Chair?
You can speak, Honorable George.
Thank you. Yes, I do want to echo the sentiments of Honorable Shivambo. We did not see the minister after we had the medium-term budget policy statement either. And that was very troubling. And we did raise it then. And today it is 23 minutes past 9. This meeting was scheduled for 9, as was already pointed out. And here we are. Parliament is a very serious institution and must be taken seriously. The minister, apparently, it sounds as if the minister was either on the way to the meeting or somewhere in a car, whatever, but clearly did not prioritize this meeting, which was at 9 o'clock. So I do think that we have every right to feel aggrieved by the fact that the minister is not here. I do think he's being disrespectful. We saw that after the medium-term budget policy statement, and it really is unacceptable. And it is our job to hold the executive to account. So the minister needs to explain why it is that we as members of parliament have now been waiting for 24 minutes for a meeting that should have started at 9 o'clock. It is not acceptable, especially given the fact that a loan has been taken. Very serious questions need to be asked about it. And the people of the country want to know what's going on. So this certainly does not bode well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, no, thanks, Noxie. I'm now connected. Honorable Shivambu, I see you have raised the hand, then Honorable Mrolong.
Chairperson, as the committee, we need to take serious exception that We've got a minister who does not take his responsibilities serious. He doesn't respect this platform. He doesn't respect Parliament. Does not respect the people of South Africa. It is his constitutional obligation to account to us. There is an issue now which we are raising about a loan which has been senselessly taken by government. And he is the one who must be held accountable. We are not holding staff members of National Treasury accountable. We did not get elected with them. They are employees of National Treasury. We are looking for a minister who must come and explain on what basis did he take the loan, and he is not here. How do we explain that? What kind of disrespect is that? And the member from the DA is correct that even in the MTBPS, he just disappeared. Something that has never happened in Parliament, where a minister just disappears, cannot even explain a medium-term budget, a policy statement. And now he has taken the loan, he's unable to explain because he's nowhere to be found. What kind of a minister is this? Why can't he resign if he has got difficulties with holding the responsibility of being a minister of finance? We have to take serious exception as Parliament, as the committee, that he has been told long time ago that he must come and account here. He is not here. It's unacceptable.
Let me take Honorable Mrolo.
Well, thank you very much. Initially, when I raised my question, I was going to express the same views that were expressed by Honorable Abrams, to the extent that we should not degenerate, because there are those who feel quite discontent about the fact that the minister is not in the meeting, that we couldn't just speak without being allowed to do so by the chair. I don't necessarily think that the concerns raised by members are misplaced. And I'm going to suggest that we chat a way forward in this regard. Firstly, I'm going to suggest that the minister be located, and the expressed views be conveyed to him, that there are concerns that he is not in a meeting which he was supposed to be part of when he started at 9. And that we really implore on him to join this meeting, so that these concerns and answers that have, and questions that may have been raised in this meeting be responded to. And of course, we note concerns that fellow members have raised with respect to the absence of the minister in this platform. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mrolo, are you done?
I am done, Chair.
TG, are we succeeding in getting the minister to be in the platform? Alan.
Chair, I've just allowed Enoch's iPad in. I would assume that's the Minister of Finance.
Can we then you call his office and try to get all to get connected, and then he responds to the issues that has been raised by Honorable Shibambu here in his letter. Do we have people coming from the office of the minister?
Chair,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Minister, what happened? We've been waiting for you from 9 o'clock. You seem to be having a problem of network.
Yeah, but I've joined.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, Chair.
Honorable Abraham.
Yeah. Yes. For the sake of the portfolio committee and earlier discussions, I think the minister should just indicate to the committee what happened. The fact that he has joined is good. It's okay, but he just joined at 9:30, and the meeting was supposed to start at 9. So it's only fair that the minister explains to the committee why is he joining now. Thank you, Chair.
You want me to respond, Chair? Chair?
Minister, can you please take the platform, brief the committee about the 11 billion rand World Bank loan?
Yes, Chair. Let me first apologize. I'm still driving. I've been getting cut in and out, and I'm going to be, when I get to the office, if I get cut off, I'll be in the garage. I'll join again. My apologies. Look, the World Bank loan, Chair, is a normal loan. When we, as a government, we go into the market and raise loan, but in this particular circumstances, the World Bank has provided what it calls a policy development loan to all its member countries, including South Africa. Given its terms and conditions, which were palatable to us, compared to what is available in the market, we went for the loan for the World Bank market loan. I don't know. I can only respond, Chair, to questions. Did you follow me, Chair?
Yes, you can proceed, Honorable Minister.
No, I was then saying I just gave an indication, a broad outline of what happened. Unless I get questions, specific questions on the detail, which I'm more than happy to answer.
Down from your side, then we're expecting questions and comments from members. Okay, let's go to item 4. Item 3. Questions and comments from members. There we are, honorable members. The minister has responded. Honorable Shivambu, Honorable George.
Chair, if I get cut off, I'm in the underground, I'm going to the office. I'll rejoin quickly in the next 2 minutes. If I get cut off, but I'm driving. I'll be back. I'm in the basement. I may lose the network.
It will be important that you get the questions that come from honorable members, so that when you respond,
reverse.
Yeah, from that angle. Honorable Dion George, Honorable Shivambu, Honorable Vessels, Alan, from your side, are those the only 3 members?
Yes, Chair, for now, Dr. George, Mr. Shivambu, and Mr. Vessel.
Okay, let's take them in that order. Dr. George?
Thank you, Chairperson. The Minister gave a very, very scanty explanation of what this loan actually is, policy development loan. I don't think that anybody really knows what that means. Now, if we roll back slightly, we have a very big debt liability in South Africa, and also the interest payments on those debts are starting and having already crowded out service delivery on vital portfolios such as health and security, etc. So what I would like to know from the Minister, in terms of the repayment agreement for this loan, what impact is this going to be having on service delivery going forward, given that the money needs to be paid? So that is the first question. The other question is, was this loan actually necessary? Because if you look at the amount of money that South Africa has already borrowed, and if we look at the amount of corruption and wastage that we see year after year from government, if that had not occurred, we would not even have to have other debt that we've already incurred. So this basically is additional debt that we've incurred because of the fact that government hasn't been spending wisely. So I want to know also from the Minister is, what is government going to do to ensure that it doesn't need to carry on borrowing? Because we can't carry on borrowing at this rate because we aren't going to be able to pay it back. So that is a very important question, I believe, that the Minister needs to give quite a lot of close attention to. I think I will also submit some written questions also on it, but I think the people of the country would like to know those two questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. George. Honorable Shivambu.
Chairperson, can we get assurance that the minister is here? Because what has just happened is extremely we gave questions in detail here when the meeting started and gave the background of what we're asking. And then he comes here, he's driving, he takes these things in a very reckless way. Like, he doesn't, in a very lackluster and I don't care attitude. We outline the questions that have to be responded to, and then he speaks for 56 seconds without responding to the questions that we have asked. And it's not like this issue is rising for the first time. A letter was written to him to say that we've got a meeting that is going to take place on the 1st of February at 9 o'clock. He arrives 30 minutes late. He doesn't listen to what we have said. He has not even read the letters that have been written to him. Be that as it may be, let's repeat the question so that he listens. Can I get assurance that he's here? Because we don't want to just speak to ourselves. Is he here? Or is still in the basement? Chairperson.
I can hear you, Honorable Shivambu. I thought you were asking questions, then later I will request
is the minister here?
I'm here.
Ask the questions. Is the minister
I'm here?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you must listen now. Because we asked these questions at the beginning of these meetings and he was not here. One is that, what is the rationale of the loan from the World Bank when we have got debt obligations annually of more than 200 billion that is guaranteed? How do you go and borrow 11 billion when that 11 billion is still going to go and pay the 200 billion which are already owing at the institutions? What is the rationale behind that? That is one. But two, what are the conditions that are attached to the loan that has been given by the World Bank to South Africa? Three, are there facilitators of the loan, transaction advisors who have been given any commission in facilitating a loan from the World Bank? And if they are there, how much money have they been paid in terms of what is required? So those are the quick questions that we want to respond to, and then later on we'll engage on the irrationality of accepting a loan from the World Bank in that particular regard. But also we want to know, when was this, as a last question, when was this process of getting a loan from the World Bank initiated, and who were involved on South Africa's side in the negotiations for this loans? Was the minister directly involved, or is there staff members in National Treasury who were involved, and if they are there, who are they? Because we must know who negotiated the details of this loan so that we have got a clearer understanding of just who is who and what is happening in National Treasury currently. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambo. Akhbara Vessels.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and good morning to all the colleagues and the Minister. Chairperson, let me add my voice to the previous two speakers and also express my disappointment. I really don't think that a minister can come to this committee when there was a letter sent to him, when he knew what the purpose of the meeting was, and then speak in less than 5 seconds, not explain to us what does a policy, what loan mean, what is the terms thereof, what does it entail, what's the repayment terms, all of those obvious details that we would expect him to brief us on as to what does this loan entail. And then, Chairperson, obviously, for many, many years now, or for the last few years now, the aim has been to get our government debt less, because we know that that is one of the most pertinent points of concern in our fiscal framework and is detrimental to the country's fiscal position, the debt servicing cost, and so forth. What I would like to know is when the minister and when the medium term, Chairperson, I'm not sure, there's some interference here. Somebody else is speaking as well.
Okay. Comrade Enoch, can you mute your mic, please?
Thank you, Honourable Abrams. Chairperson, what I want to know is the medium-term budget policy statement expressed the view that government debt would be, we will get that under control. We will lessen government debt, and the projections in terms of the medium term was made on getting rid of government debt, the debt servicing cost getting less, and so forth. What I want to know is what the implication of this 11 billion rand will be, and is that in the medium-term policy statement that will increase our debt, and what further loans do the Minister foresee that we will need to actually keep this boat adrift? And is there any other loans that's currently in the pipeline that we can be made privy to know what the future holds with regards to that? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mapitsela. Honorable
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Honorable Minister, I'm assuming that there were other banks that were approached. And which are those banks, and why did you finally choose the World Bank? I think the public would like to know that. Which are those banks that were approached, and why did you finally choose the World Bank? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, are you done?
Yes, Chair. Honorable Mabitsela is done. You can take Honorable Skosana now.
If Honorable Mavilata is done, then let's invite Honorable Scott.
Honorable Skosana, you've been invited to take the floor.
Honorable Chair, are you calling me?
Yes. You can take the platform now.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and greetings to all the honorable members, the Minister and the Treasury staff, and all other stakeholders present. Yeah, I think the response from the Minister was too brief. It was very brief. I think we thought the Minister was going to be broad and indicate as to whether were there no other part, because I think we're all aware that we do have serious challenges as a result of the loan, and also what is our capacity as the country to be able to pay it in.
Is it me, Chair, or the member who's speaking is cutting terribly wrong in terms of the network?
Yeah.
Generally a problem of network.
Very weak. These men who live in rural areas are giving us problems, including the chair.
I've got a better network here from home in Malambe. Skosan, can you still hear us? Okay. He will come back. Let me, in the meantime, invite Honorable Mrolo. Honorable Mrolo, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. But just have one brief question. Minister, if you can expatiate on how does the loan from the World Bank assist in funding the budget deficit at an effective rate that is much lower than the country borrowing in the bond market? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Mrolo. Those are the questions for now. Honorable Minister, those are the questions. Can you please respond?
Yes, Chairperson. Dr. George says his questions are two, my record is three. But let me just start by saying, when we table the budget in Parliament, we say a couple of things. We say, this is the revenue we're likely to raise. And we then say, this is the expenditure we're going to incur as a nation. There's always a difference between those two, which we call the deficit. Now, we go to the market and raise money every year for three things. For three things. The first one is to raise money to fund that deficit between expenditure and revenue. It's one component of what we borrow. The second component of what we borrow is debt service cost. The third component of what we borrow is the redemptions. So your total figure, which you go and raise in the market, as in this year, we're likely to raise about 630 billion rand. So if you look at 11 billion rand in the scheme of things, it's small. So we're likely to raise about 630 billion rand. Now, where do we go when is this money? We go to everybody in the market, to development finance institutions all over, including the New Development Bank, African Development Bank, and all of those things, the World Bank, everybody. We go and raise money, and we go to the market and raise money and bonds. So in order to get the 630 billion rand. So let's have that first as a measure. I'm going to come back to that issue when I deal with Mr. Shivambo's question. Now, Dr. George raises an important point, which I thought was a comment, but it raises a question about the fact that our debt service costs are growing. And that should worry every one of us, including ourselves as a nation. We should be worried about that. And because correctly, as it says, it's likely to crowd out what we would call service delivery. Because as you see now, we're spending more on debt service cost, more than the entire security cluster combined. We're spending more than the health budget. So that in itself presupposes we should be worrying at as a nation in that regard. The question accept is likely to, as a result, is likely to crowd out service delivery unless we work towards containing that expenditure in the long term and carrying more debt in the long term. Was it necessary? As I indicated, it is necessary. We're going to the market to raise about 630 billion rand. This 11 billion rand is part of what we're raising to achieve those objectives. So the necessity is there. Now that also talks to the question Honorable Shivambo was raising about the rationale. And I've indicated that we're spending we're going to raise 630 billion rand in the market for that debt. And therefore, it's necessary because we've got to make sure that that expenditure, which some of it is related to current expenditure, some of it is going to service, debt service cost, some of it is going to redemptions. So we're raising money. It's a necessary thing government does on an annual basis, and we go to the market every week. So it's a rationale. Are the conditions attached to my knowledge? No. And the Land Bank posted this thing on its website. Anybody, if it does not believe us, can go to the World Bank's website and download it. There are no specific conditions attached to the loan. Are there facilitators? We don't have facilitators. We've got people employed, a whole division in Treasury called Asset and Liabilities. Those are the technical people who negotiate the loans, who do everything on a date, who go to the market on every week. And the only thing they do to us is to report how much have they raised. We don't interfere with their operations. The question why the World Bank? I've indicated we've got money from the New Development Bank, which is the BRICS Bank, and a whole range of other DFIs. It's not only the World Bank. Insofar as the effective rate compared to the market, the World Bank tells us, and that the IMF estimation is that we're 200 basis points lower than we would have had if we went to the market. So it was cheaper for us. The second thing, it gives us a repayment holiday of about 3 years, and we'll start on the 4th year. So the terms are very favorable, and these things are part of our debt strategy management. So in that regard, I think it was a good approach. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So you have responded to the questions raised by all the members, or you were only responding to those of Shivambo and George?
No, I started to George. I went to, for instance, the effective rate that I'm referring to is Honorable Law. Mabitsela asked you whether why do we go to Land Bank our loan. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, Minister. Members, are there follow-up questions?
Honorable George, Honorable Shibambu, Honorable Mrolo, the hand that you are raising, is it a legacy hand or is it a new hand?
No, it's a 1974 hand. Let me lower it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. If there are members who want to make follow-up questions, can you please raise your hands? Honorable George, Honorable Shibambu, Honorable Abraham.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Minister, for your inputs on that. I just want to ask a bit more on this loan in particular. My understanding is that the loan was granted on the basis of the relief it's going to give also for social relief of distress. That was my understanding from the Treasury's note. And that would be, I would presume then, in the 22-23 budget. So what I want to know from the Minister, is that in fact so? Is that the money would then be applied for social relief? Then also, my understanding is that this is basically on a sort of an optional drawdown. And the question then would be is, when are you going to draw down that loan? Because obviously it's going to have an impact on when you issue dollar-denominated debt in the market. So that is the crux of my question, is that, is it going to be used for social relief and distress, firstly, and is it going to be in the 22-23 year? And then when are you going to draw down, and what impact is that going to have actually on dollar-denominated debt in the market? Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. George. Honorable Shibambu.
No, thanks, Chair. I asked a question about transaction advisors and whether they paid fees or commissions and how much money was that and who are those people if they were there. Can we have that clarity? And then can we be given a written list of the conditionalities that are attached to the loan so that we are National Treasury said something else, that this is about the relief that is needed post-COVID-19 pandemic. And then he came here to say that the loan is specifically for policy development. Which policy development? What exactly is going to be done? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to purpose the economy? What are you going to do with illustration of what is this money going to be used for? Or is it going to be thrown into the fiscus and thereafter disappears in repaying the debt which already exists now? What exactly is going to be done with the loan that has been taken senselessly from the World Bank? Can we have those specific responses, please?
Okay, thanks, Honorable Shibambu. Honorable Abraham, then Honorable Skosana.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think, Chair, I will not necessarily answer for the minister, but based on what I have heard him say, I will only ask my own question, because I heard him say that there are no conditionalities attached to the loan. So I got that. But my question, Chair, is whether we have met the preconditions as expressed in the medium-term budget. And secondly, Chair, I also heard the minister say that the people responsible for facilitation in terms of the loans that are made within the World Bank or elsewhere is a division in the department, which is asset and liabilities. My question is whether we do not have the directors within those divisions in the platform, so that they can also be given an opportunity to make clarities where they feel that the minister could have glided over, so that we get to the satisfaction of the members. Thank you, Chair.
Enkosi. Mhlonishwa Sikhosana.
Honorable Chairperson.
Wait a bit, Minister. I'm looking for Sikhosana because he has raised it. I will come back to you now. Okay. It looks like Honorable Sikhosana has a problem of network. Okay. Over to you, Minister, to respond to those questions raised by the members.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Chair, I'm going to ask their officials on the platform who are going to respond to the question, what a development policy loan is about, that technical question, and respond to that. And also respond, how do they work? To my knowledge, we've got a whole division which has got technical people headed by Duncan Peterson, Dr. Duncan Peterson, who is on the line, who can explain that there are no commissions, there's nothing like that. But then answer the broad question. Again, what Dr. George said is for social relief. To my knowledge, is a policy support, including some of the, it's broad in its approach, which we're going to pick and choose where do we utilize it. But I'm going to ask the DG and Dr. Duncan Peters to deal with when is it going to be drawn down, what are the implications, all of those questions. Dr. George, I'm not darking them, but I think the technical people can answer that question better than I can.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning, honorable members. Thank you very much for the question. Maybe let me just explain in our engagements with the World Bank. It's very clear that we own the 0.7% of the World Bank. There's no doubt. We contribute to processes there, and we are entitled, firstly, to go to them and get loans. We're part of 189 member countries. But obviously, Minister will deal with the politics as to why in the past we did not go to the World Bank and why we went there. In the World Bank system, there are various products, loan products. Now, two specific loan products that will be relevant for South Africa at this point in time for our explanation. There's something called a specific investment loan, SIL. The specific investment loan is what you'll remember Eskom got in 2010, the $3.75 billion. We negotiated that at the time. There were conditionalities that we were toiling around at the time, but finally we got our way because at the time they wanted to influence the processes that Eskom would go about, but at the time we were able to put our foot down and got that loan, and we're okay with the conditionalities as they said them at the time. The second product that as a South Africa we looked at now is a DPL, which is a development policy loan. Now DPLs generally, and this is a product in the World Bank, are used to provide budget support to member countries and their programs. And we're talking about institutional reform issues, and they obviously are aimed at in improving inclusive growth in countries, and largely also aimed at poverty reduction programs. So when we looked at this, the World Bank saw us qualifying. We also saw ourselves qualifying for a DPL. Now, this DPL by nature rapidly disbursed, because sometimes it can take very, very long in negotiations, etc., in negotiating. But however, in this case, it was a quick disbursement in the World Bank standards, where countries actually looked at our own programs. There are some specific actions that they were looking at us on, and that's why we got this loan. Now, And again, it's on concessional basis, honorable members, in terms of the funding that we got. And mainly also DPLs like these, we look at a country like South Africa and say, what has been our crisis responses to the pandemic and to the challenges? So they saw them as sound, so we qualified. Secondly, we also saw us having bold steps that we instituted in dealing with the virus and the implication thereof on our public finances. So as a result, we then qualified in terms of criteria where the pandemic on its own had a huge impact on our fiscal finance, in a fiscal situation, including the performance generally of the economy. So again, how these will mitigate on lives of ordinary people, when they looked at this and we engaged with them, obviously we qualified. Also, now as part of our own programs to deal with our own challenges, there were various reforms that we launched as part of our economic and reconstruction and recovery plan that we instituted last year, that aim obviously at ensuring that there are actions and there are immediate actions that will ensure that we recover in the short term. And again, these on their own were actions that they looked at and they saw us fit to give us this 750 million rand as the form of a budget support of some kind, as a form of budget support. Now, Duncan will explain what we then do when we looked at these dollars, what our dollar obligations, what were our dollar commitments. Every year at the time of the budget in February, in the budget review, we will specify how much of foreign foreign denominated loans we would get. We had penciled in $3 billion. This was approved by Parliament in February when we presented the budget. In terms of our funding strategy, we would have upfront indicated how much in dollars or euros and etc. we'll get in the market. We got this. So as part of our funding plan, Duncan will also indicate where are we, because he does that for a living every day. Why are we vis-a-vis the 3 billion rand target? And when and how Dr. George will use, and you were asking about drawdowns and at when will you convert, he will explain that, because from a cash management point of view, we've got certain dollar commitments where we have to repay redemptions that are coming due. So from a strategy point of view, we then decide when and how do we use the dollars. But Duncan will finally explain. Our debt is sitting at almost 80% debt to GDP. That's what we said in February. Now, if you look at 80% debt to GDP, there are then issues and factors that will then call on us to ensure that we manage our debt in a particular way, including manage interest on payments. We said to Parliament, and we've been saying to Parliament, that we're spending far more in debt repayment and interest payment than more than the budget of health, for instance. So in managing our debt and the concessional terms that we got this loan for, and how cheap the loan became, then from an cash management, debt management, interest payment scheduling, and so on, we then decided that maybe this may be the best, but Duncan can give further details in terms of this. We did say, Minister confirmed that there are no conditions attached to the loan at all. At all. It is the actions that have been recognized, as I explained to them, around our interventions in dealing with the economy, in dealing with poverty, that we were able to get a thumbs up from the World Bank. But the key point for me as leading the team that goes into the market every week, honorable members, is to one, ensure that we are managing our interest payments to a point where we pay far less than what is due. So if the market is 300, 400% cheaper, we are then forced by our own convictions to go cheaper and to go the route. We didn't only go to the World Bank, and there was a question. We are not only going to the World Bank, by the way. We did previously go to the New Development Bank. The same committee previously, and in Parliament, in the Appropriation Committee, we were asked, because in our payment, if you look at the National Treasury vote, we're paying 4 billion rand on average in the last couple of years to pay for subscriptions at the New Development Bank. It's a multilateral development bank, just like the World Bank. What are we getting value for? Nothing in the past. But now our engagements with institutions like World Bank, Development Bank, African Development Bank, the IMF, including many, many others that will come to give us loan on concessional basis. We will be open to those. So long as the conditionalities, so long as those conditions are not going to impact on the sovereignty of the state. That's a principal view that we took as we engaged, and the World Bank knows this, that no one is going to dictate to us on how the macroeconomic strategy and stance of the country should be. So we have been jealously guarding that. But Duncan, maybe Honorable Chair, can come in and just explain the day-to-day modalities of cash management, including the 750 and how we're going to use it vis-a-vis other loans that we get on a weekly basis. We go to market, we raise about 20 billion rand from various institutions, various asset managers, and not only the World Bank or multilateral development banks. I can say that this is the first ever in the democracy that we went to the World Bank. And I can imagine there were reasons politically why the country or the government then, including now, only waited until now to go to the World Bank. So we've never been to the World Bank for a loan like this. The first time was many, many years ago. And even apartheid, when you look at history, apartheid government only went to the World Bank in the 1950s, in 57 in particular. In around 1994-95, we got 15 million rand dollars to support local government interventions because of the conditionalities at the time. We repay that very quickly. So the World Bank of today, Chair, is we look at it different from the World Bank of the 70s, where structural adjustment programs were the order of the day. There's some commentators and sayers who says the World Bank then was an extension of the imperialist regimes of the US, etc. That's what was said, and history says that. But we have looked at what the World Bank is today, where we are participating in various committees, then we are members, and the role that we played as South Africa to reform the World Bank and its institutions. And we continue to do that because obviously one cannot say that it's work done. There's a lot of work also to do in the World Bank, in the way that they engage low-income countries, the way that they engage developing countries like ourselves. So I think we've got a bigger role, much bigger role to play on behalf of many, many an emerging economy out there in the world. But however, for our purposes, we'll only use it as and when we need it, and there will not be any conditionality that is going to bind the fiscals, that is going to bind our sovereignty and sell our sovereignty, or even sell our soul, if you want to call it that. But Chair, maybe Duncan can explain the Honorable George's questions around the cash management side of the 750. Duncan, are you on the line? I think you are.
Yes, I am, DG. Good afternoon, good morning, honorable members. I'm Duncan Peterson. I'm responsible for the Asset and Liability Division at the National Treasury. Just to respond to some of those questions that the DG's asked me to speak to, as the Minister pointed out earlier, honorable members, our gross borrowing requirement for this financial year is 475 billion rand. 77 billion rand of the 475 is what we intend to raise in dollar-denominated funding. So that's about $5.3 billion if you look at it in dollar terms. And then, of course, this particular loan is part of the 77.6 billion at around 11 billion or so. So if one then looks at the context of the 11 billion rand World Bank loan in the context of the 475 billion rand gross borrowing requirement, it gives us a sense of where it fits in proportional terms. In terms of how this loan is negotiated, there are no transaction advisors to the earlier question. The loans are negotiated by the team in the Asset and Liability Division. In particular, there are two teams that are critical for a loan of this nature. The one team is the liability management team, and within that team, there's a unit called debt issuance, and they are responsible for our market funding and our DFI funding. So they are the ones that engage with the World Bank directly in terms of the terms of the loan and all the various aspects. And by terms, of course, we are talking here about what the Minister was referring to earlier in terms of the interest rate, the grace period, and so on, which in this instance is highly concessional. There's another team within the Asset and Liability Management Division, which is also very critical to a loan of this nature, which is the Strategy and Risk Management team. That team's role is there to ensure that this loan is conducted within the risk benchmarks that the National Treasury have set for the sovereign. And one of those risk benchmarks is that our foreign debt can never exceed 15% of our total debt. And that is to make sure that our foreign debt or our dollar-denominated debt does not become a systemic risk to the sovereign, like has been the case in some of the other countries in Latin America and elsewhere. So the strategy and risk management team's role is very much to ensure that all of our risk benchmarks are met in negotiating a loan of this nature. What will the loan be used for? The DG touched on this. Typically, honorable members, our dollar-denominated funding is used for our dollar-denominated commitments. Very rarely do we take our dollar-denominated funding and convert it into rands because of the costs associated with that. We did do that last year because of the pressure that we were under from COVID, but we do not intend doing it this year. So to answer the question, our dollar-denominated funding is going to be used for our dollar-denominated commitments so that we also manage the costs prudently from that perspective. In terms of when the loan will be drawn down, the way it works, honorable members, is that as soon as the loan agreement is signed, those funds become available for South Africa to use. We keep those funds in our Forex account with the Reserve Bank, and we use those funds in line with our liquidity requirements. So as and when those commitments are due, we disperse the funds as required. In terms of just finally, honorable members, the broader question around the $5.3 billion that we plan to raise in this year. As the DG indicated, $1.5 billion was raised from the New Development Bank, which is an important, of course, other DFI that we work with to access concessional funding in order to lower the cost of our borrowing. The $750 million loan from the World Bank. And then we did plan in this financial year to also go to the market for $3 billion worth of market funding. Now, of course, that market funding is much more expensive than this kind of concessional funding that we receive from the World Bank. And I think the DG already spoke to the concessionality of the loan and how important that is in terms of helping us reduce our cost of funding and therefore our debt service costs, which I think the DG also mentioned is something that we are very concerned about. And this loan goes a long way in terms of helping us address those high debt service costs. DG and Minister, I'll leave it there. I'm not sure if there's anything else that I've missed out on, but you'll ask me to come back if necessary. Thank you, honorable members.
Thanks, honorable members. No, Chair, this is where we end in terms of our responses. But if you look at the budget review, Chair, page 84 and page 85, that's where international borrowing, some explanations and information around the redemptions we publish. So we publish it, it's open, there's no secret about it. So one can imagine in the budget review that we're going to issue in February, we will update the table 7.4 there, where we talk about borrowing from international financial institutions. Will obviously include the financial institutions that we borrowed from. And there also, we indicate the rate, we indicate the term and the number of years, we also indicate the grace period and the amount. So transparency is a feature in terms of how we manage the public finances of this country, and as demonstrated in the chapter, including what our financing strategy is also indicated in the same chapter 7 of the budget review. So there is definitely transparency where we are at, and including any other commitments that we make, Honorable George. So it is there for everyone to see and for everyone to interact with. I'll give it over to the minister. Thank you, Chair. You had to say some other hand.
Minister, the DG is sending it to you.
I don't know. I'm in your hands, Chair. Are you wrapping up?
Okay, let me.
Or, or do you have any specific issue for me to deal with?
Okay, let me take. I see there's Honorable Shivambu who wants to make the last follow-up question. Then come back to you to make concluding remarks from your side. Then I will make closing remarks. Honorable Shivambu.
There's Honorable Skosana as well.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, I've listened to the so-called explanations that came from the ministry and from the department. There is no rationality that has been given now as to why we took the loan from the World Bank, except that we are eligible for a loan, therefore we must take it. Like, what kind of logic is that to say, because I'm eligible for a loan, I must take it? I'm eligible to take a loan from Edgar's, but I don't have to go and take a loan from Edgar's. Like, what is the basis? Was there going to be a crisis, a fiscal crisis in South Africa if we did not take that loan from the World Bank? Well, we're going to fail to meet basic obligations because there's no logic, there's no understandable logic as are we taking a loan, because eligibility only cannot be a basis of taking a loan, particularly from an institution which we cannot be misled by a DG that says that has reformed and it is now a progressive institution. It's not true. The World Bank serves the interest of the imperialist masters. Its agenda is about controlling the lesser developed parts of the world in a manner that is going to basically retain the status quo of a global economy that is dominated by the West. Like, that is basically all about it. So if you're talking about like a specific justification to say that we have taken this loan because there's a health crisis or because there's an educational crisis or there's a specific infrastructure program, maybe we're going to listen to you. But the manner in which it's being explained now is that we are eligible, therefore we must take. What kind of logic is that in terms of what should happen? I want to propose a way forward, Chair. I want to propose that the committee must say that we do not agree with National Treasury's decision to take a loan from the World Bank. And if the loan agreements have not been signed yet, the National Treasury must not proceed to sign those loans, must instead engage with other lenders that will then look into how we then deal with issues that are immediate. There's no need to take a loan from the World Bank. That is my proposal, that we must resolve this issue in that particular way. We must reject National Treasury's taking a loan from the World Bank. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambu. Honorable Skosan, Hlonishwa.
No, ngiyathokoza Mhlonishwa Sihlalo, and thank you very much to the Minister for the responses, and the DG and Mr. Duncan. Maybe my question, which I think is an expansion from my previous question that I've asked, is can we confidently say that we have enough capacity to meet all our debt obligations? Because I've heard the DG and Mr. Duncan made mention of the fact that when we look at the interest rates, when we look at the issue of the payment holiday, when we look at what we're likely to raise from the market, indeed we will be able to pay this particular loan of the World Bank. But when we look at holistically to all our debt obligations, can we confidently say that we do have enough capacity to meet all of them? Because I think I'm raising this because I'm looking at a point where we must not find ourselves saying, okay, we do have this capacity now, but we find ourselves in the near future going to another a financial institution for another loan because finding ourselves going to other financial institutions because we're unable to meet some of our obligations because the chunk of the revenue goes to service these particular debts. So can we confidently say is that we have enough capacity to meet all these debt obligations? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Chair, thanks, Mhlonishwa. Let me see if ever there are other hands. Minister, you can respond to
My hand is
those.
up, Chair.
Oh, okay, sure. Thanks, Honorable Abraham. Over to you.
Yes, Chair. Chair, we cannot quickly jump into the conclusion of rejecting the action taken by National Treasury. If we have areas of clarity to the department, then let us raise those. And I think, especially where I think Honorable Shivambu raises a point that the department is taking a loan because the loan is available. But I think, Chair, put differently, the concern that Honorable Shivambu has would be a question for me that goes to the department once again, that they make an emphasis to us as members of the committee to say exactly what, because before we come to conclusions, we must go to the agreement. We must have clarity on the agreement. And therefore, the questions that we are dealing with are questions that are covered in the agreement. And I think at this stage, around the question that Honorable Shivambu has raised, in as far as the department just taking the loan because it is available, I think the department must come in and make an emphasis on the reasons, because I think that has been touched, but I am not here to answer for the department, but I think the department should make an emphasis and explain to the committee why the loan was taken, which areas necessitated that the loan be taken, so that we are all on the same level as committee members. If the department is able to give that to us, then we can be able to all of us agree or not agree on whether the areas that they have covered needed us to go for the loan rather than rejecting the action. Let's get more clarity. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks. Before I go to Honorable Mrolo, Honorable Shivambu, I see your hand. Is it a legacy hand or a senior hand?
No, it's the hand that I raised earlier, Chair. Let's hear.
Okay, sure. Honorable Mrolo, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chairperson. It is no secret that that South Africa requires a measure of debt to finance its budget deficit, which in turn funds government socio-economic program. I am quite content with the fact that this loan from the World Bank would assist in funding this budget deficit at an effective rate. I'm also content with the fact that the conditions are already entrenched in the fiscal framework and in the NTPPS. I am, however, going to agree with what is proposed by Honorable Abrams, that more meat needs to be given to the reasons which are attributes of this loan. And I think that Treasury has given us answers, but I think it would have to go into much bigger depth in expounding on the necessity of this loan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mhlompe. Honorable Minister, what's happening with my gadget now? Okay. Okay, yeah. Honorable Minister, can you make concluding remarks from your side so that I can make concluding remarks?
No, thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start by going back to the rationale. We tabled the budget in February last year. As we tabled that budget, we said we're going to go to the market and raise about 547 billion. We said that transparently to Parliament. Now that 547 billion rand, you're not raising it from one source. We go and do an auction and do bonds and go to development finance institutions and so on and so on. So rationale is there. You may disagree with us that you are entitled to your own opinion, but the rationale is there. The next set of issues is, should the committee reject this, and I would appeal to even a notion that suggests that the committee must do so, would be detrimental to the work we're doing. That's my appeal, because if we go to the market as we're going to go to the market every week, who's going to go to give us money, part of that 547, which was still raising? If for whatever reason, some ideological or some not, there will be, the Parliament may reject it. We respect Parliament, but I'm saying, suggesting that it's not going to be, it can be, it's going to plunge us into a fiscal crisis. That's my appeal. The third point is, are we likely to meet our obligations? The answer is yes and no. Yes, for now. That's what we will be telling you on the 23rd. Yes, for now. But we'll also be telling you another story. And that story is, if we don't change the debt trajectory, we may not solve those obligations, we may not meet our obligations. So our commitment is that we must change that debt trajectory so that we should be able to meet our obligations. This loan on its own is not a threat to those obligations. The point raised by earlier on by Dr. George, I don't want to underestimate it, because one of the issues he raised was corruption and so on. One of the commitments we're making is that we've got to make sure that this expenditure is done. It's not going to be a one-day thing to resolve this question, Dr. George. I appreciate the point we're raising, and it's noted, but it's not going to be a day's job. We need to be dealing, make sure that expenditure is spent efficiently and is spent effectively. That's the commitment we want to make to the committee. That's a commitment we're going to reinforce on the 23rd. But thank you, Chairperson, for giving us the opportunity to explain our case. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Minister and your team. Honorable members, thanks. Let me indicate that there are certain things that I will want to reinstate that we have dealt with before in regard to issues of the debt and the deficit. In the past 4 years, this committee has been very, very emphatic on issues of debt management. I've gone through the 2018 SCOF report on the MTBBS fiscal framework, which the committee was very clear that Treasury should manage expenditure patterns, reprioritize, and not exacerbate the debt to GDP ratio, and raise other issues related to that. That the debt is actually having a detrimental effect. How much we are spending on servicing the debt goes a long way in causing more harm to the poor people. That's what the committee has noted in 2018. And again in 2019, when dealing with the fiscal framework and revenue proposal, the committee emphasized to Treasury that there is an urgent need to ensure sustainable finances by containing the budget deficit and stabilizing the debt. And by then, the committee even looked at the projections, the upward trajectory of the debt to GDP, which at that time was set to reach 60.2% in 2023-24. And the committee was quite very worried about that. And in the same year, dealing with the revised fiscal, revised framework and revenue proposals, the committee recommended that the minister should report on a quarterly basis on the debt management strategy, because this was one of the issues that was raised very sharply on the revised framework and revenue proposal. 2020 special revised fiscal framework and revenue proposals. You will remember that somewhere around June, in order to deal with COVID, we had a special budget tabling, which was called a special revised fiscal framework and revenue proposal. SCOF, again, was very concerned that the debt servicing costs were quite very high, and it is likely that they are going to reach 301 billion rand in 2022-2023. And the other issue that was raised, which is of course not a subject for today, which we'll have to discuss on another day, is that many central banks all over the world were reducing their interest rates. And contrary to that, the SARB, South Africa, was not responding in terms of reducing the interest rates. And we have seen that recently. They've increased the interest rates. It's an independent institution, but it does not mean that it can't be criticized. When they came here to present their annual report, one of the issues that was raised is this one, that when people are so much burdened with their debt, household debts, why are you increasing the interest rates? Because that in itself is causing more burden to individuals who are servicing car loans, bonds, and a whole range of other loans that they have with financial institutions. So the Reserve Bank is not helpful in the situation that we find ourselves. And we can't keep quiet about that. The issue of the sovereign debt crisis was raised at that time, that we should not find ourselves falling into the sovereign debt crisis. This matter was also again discussed on the 2020 MTBBS in October in regard to the concern on the projection to reach 93% of GDP in 2023. Because the projection is that next year it might reach 5.54 trillion rand. But I think when you make a presentation, when you brief us after presenting the budget, you will have to give us the latest projections. Again, if you remember, we had the 2021 fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The issue of the debt service costs was raised very, very, very sharply by the members. And lastly, it was the 2021 MTBBS late last year, revised fiscal framework and revenue proposals. Members raised issues in regard to the fiscal situation that was worsening in the past financial year, with a debt to GDP ratio of 70.89% in 2021, as compared to 57.47% in 2019-20, and which was lower than that in the year before, 2018-2019, at 51.2%. So by so doing, trying to recap, I wanted to demonstrate to members that this committee has not been sleeping on the job. It has been doing its work on this matter and other issues. And it has been playing its oversight role, and will continue to do so. So, Minister, we acknowledge the challenges that government is facing. Be that as it may, our challenge as public representatives is that that servicing costs are crowding out the expenditure on basic services. And this in itself end up in increasing of poverty. So many people now are very poor, more especially as a result of COVID. But even before COVID, the economy was not doing well. Unemployment has gone very high. We have seen the figures produced, released by Stats SA last week. I think unemployment now is above 34% and inequality. In terms of the debt service cost, you have alluded to that, Minister, that as we speak, the gross to GDP ratio is 68.8%. Learning and culture, government spends 403 billion rand. On social development, which is the second item, government spends 335 billion. Then the third expenditure item is debt service cost, which, if I'm not mistaken, is standing at 270 billion rand. It's quite very high. Debt service cost has now gone above health and community development, because the fourth expenditure item is health, which stands at 248 billion. And this is not in line with our NDP, and which we are fast approaching. We are now at 2022. We are left with 8 years to reach our target to reach the time frame in regard to the NDP, because by 2030, there are targets that government has set for itself. And government has not set a target that that service cost will be above health and community development. If it goes on like this, Because if you look at the difference between social development and debt service cost, it's almost 60 billion, if I'm not mistaken. So not so long, the debt service cost will almost be equivalent to social development and even surpass that. So we have to do something in this regard. That's why we have been worried all along. So government must make sure that it contains budget deficit, avoid sovereign debt crisis. And as it has been agreed in all the meetings before, which this meeting is not here to change those decisions, the minister will have to report on a quarterly basis to this committee on the effectiveness of the debt management strategy. Come back to this committee after the 23rd, show us as to how is government going to improve on the revenue collection, deal with issues of tax evasion, illicit financial flows. And if I'm not mistaken, there is an outstanding report that we must get from a team that was constituted by FSCA and others on illicit financial flows, improve economic growth, create jobs, more especially for young people. So many young people are out of jobs, contain expenditure without undermining the poor or pro-poor programs. So thanks very much, honorable members. We'll deal further with the issues that have been raised on the after the 23rd of February, because we believe that the minister will address all the issues that have been raised by the members now and previously, as I've already reported that for the past 4 years or so, this committee has been on this matter, and it should be taken very, 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 very serious. Thanks very much. Alan, are we meeting next week on the, is it on the 8th? The minister to
Chairperson, Chair, on a point of order, just to remind you that there has not been any explanation as to why National Treasury took the loan from the World Bank, except that they were eligible to have the loan. And that was the purpose of this meeting. We have not been given a satisfactory explanation as to why did you take the loan from the World Bank, except that you were eligible to get it. And that is what we should be dealing with in terms of and how does taking a loan from the World Bank deal with the debt to GDP ratio, which we have said in the committee before, has to be managed differently. How does piling up debt deal with the debt to GDP ratio? And words from the World Bank without a clear purpose of just what are you going to do with that particular resource. I don't think that the ministry and the department and whoever came to report on this question has satisfactorily dealt with this question, because Parliament must not just be given answers and then we accept everything else that we've been given as answers. That is why you are treated with disrespect. That is why a minister just comes to the meeting late and he doesn't say anything wrong about it. He doesn't apologize, nothing. Because he just was going to say this, that, even contradictory things. Contradict what was contained in the statement of National Treasury as to the purpose of the loan. And then we must just fold our arms and say, no, there's nothing wrong. We must just accept this. We can't do anything. And later on, society is going to blame all of us that when you got into a sovereign debt crisis, you as the Standing Committee on Finance, you were there. What did you do? What did you say? There is nothing satisfactory that has been. The proposal, Chair, is that we must express our disagreement to taking of a loan from the World Bank as the Standing Committee on Finance. And of course, in terms of how we then deal with National Treasury, unless we then deal with it during the budget processes, we can only advise now that if the loan agreement has not been signed, it must not be signed. and then we'll deliberate further after the budget presentation, and then we will then take a conclusion as to how to move forward in that regard. We'll then come with different options of what else can be done other than the World Bank recommendation. That is my proposal, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Shwam. In terms of the work of the Standing Committee, which you were a member even before 2019, I recapped what the Standing Committee has been doing in regard to this to this matter, playing its oversight role and the decisions that has been taken by Parliament in this regard. So the Standing Committee has not been sleeping on the job. I think we all acknowledge that. Look at all the reports, February tabling of budget, MTBBS from 2018 until the last MTBBS of 2021 last year. It's quite very, very clear on the decisions that Parliament have taken in this regard. In regard to the purpose, the minister, I think, have done that. What you should say is that you don't agree with the reasons that have been given by the minister, because he has issued out a statement earlier on, and then even today, he and the officials have explained as to why they took that loan. Also, the minister, Honorable Shivambu, has apologized when he said he's in the basement as to why is he late for the meeting. So I will appeal to you that with all the explanations that we have received now and having engaged on the report, let's take the process forward to after the minister will have tabled the report. On the 24th, we are going to have a meeting to get a further briefing on the fiscal framework as usual. And then this matter, as it has been dealt with before, will also be a matter that will arise from there. As to us taking a decision now, I think other members have expressed their opinions. I don't think for now it will be proper that we stand on the way of the executive to say you can't do this, pending this and that. Ours is to play an oversight role, and the executive has got a particular function to perform. So let's allow the process to unfold, and then on the 24th, and the same day, even on the 23rd, remember we have a lockdown session from 11 or from 12, where we'll be scrutinizing the budget. It's a matter that we are going to deal with, and then see how we process the fiscal framework report to Parliament. I think that's how we should conclude this matter. So, Alan, we are meeting next week on the 8th, isn't it?
Yes, Chair. Next week, Tuesday the 8th, it is a briefing by the Minister and National Treasury on the audit action plans for the finance portfolio.
Okay. No, thanks very much, honorable members, honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and the team, and the entire team of Parliament, including the PBO. Let's meet again next week, Tuesday. However, on this matter, we'll continue to handle it. It is a matter which is a work in progress. So it's a matter that we'll also process when we deal with the fiscal framework on the 24th of February. Thanks very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Long live the chairperson.
Malibongwe
Recording
stopped.
from the city of Matthew Goniwa.
True that, and it's not a rural area, Chair. Point of correction. The city of Matthew is not a rural area.
Like where?
No, I'm not in a fighting mood. I'm just saying.
You have but when you think there are animals going around here, we shop with them in the supermarkets.
I see the grass thatched rondavels where Comrade Bowen always speaks from.
It's a lapa, that one. He stays in a modern house. So
okay.
he has the lapa outside that house.
Sure, Chair. Bye.
See you next week, Tuesday.
Sure. Bye.